Speaking of the chagrin of Philly fans, we go to other big news in Philly, where Joel Embiid is currently listed as out for tonight's critical Game 3 against the Heat and the Sixers, but it's possible. Embiid, who fractured his right orbital bone, has a concussion. He can still play. Here's Brian Windhorst on that.
He hasn't cleared the concussion protocol yet, so he can't be listed as anything but out. This is more of a issue related to that issue as opposed to the orbital fracture. So if he is able to follow the steps and clear concussion protocol on Friday, and he's okay playing in that mask, I still think there's a decent chance that he's going to get out there for Game 3.
So that's huge news right there, because I think people see the word out and they're like, oh, he's definitely not playing. But there's a chance. So let's live in this world, Alan and Monica, where Joel Embiid actually gets cleared. He actually plays. Alan, what would this mean to the Sixers' chances to win this series?
I mean, certainly it increases because they're a better team when he's on the floor, statistically, defensively, everything, and especially when it comes to rim protection, which they haven't had without him in this series. But does it help them win the series? I didn't think they were going to win this series even with him because they're just not a complete enough team, and the disconnect between he and James Harden. But for Monica, for Joel Embiid to come back. Now, the schedule, I think, screwed them because they played Wednesday, one-day travel day, back on the court play again. If they had what the Celtics-Bucks series had, which is 3 days in between games, they don't play till Saturday afternoon. You buy him more time to get out there. They didn't get that opportunity in this, so I do think it does hinder any real impact he could have coming back as soon as he could. But for him to be there, it certainly is something that a superstar or star wants to be there for his team, and he will be that.
The best chance the Sixers have of getting this done is for Joel Embiid to be on the floor and be able to contribute. And so I think we're not talking about a guy that is six-man and plays valuable minutes and is sneakily a contributor. He is the catalyst for all of the success that the Sixers have had this season. And so if he is willing to play and put himself out there, you have to do it. Do I think that they can still get by this Miami squad? I'm not confident in that, but I think he is that much of a game changer if he can actually play and play without hesitation.
So Embiid comes back, how many games do they win?
I think Embiid can get you two.
Two.
Gentleman's sweep. I think you get the one, the pride one at home. It's how nothing changes. Him showing up, they're slightly better, but they're not any good unless he and Harden can play as a duo. If they can connect, then you have something that has not been there. The Heat are a better version of the Raptors. The Raptors have length, they play defense, they're gritty, and they gave the Sixers trouble despite the fact they went up 3-0. They went up 3-0 because Embiid made an amazing shot. But otherwise, that was a pretty competitive series. So when you think about that, the Heat are a better version of what the Raptors were, and they struggled, and Harden struggled against them. But that's why I just don't feel like no matter what, they weren't going to win this series.
Okay, and you mentioned Harden. Here's the big thing. Everybody said, look, to stay in this, Harden has to be that superstar guy we saw back in Houston. That is not what we're seeing. So what, Monica, is wrong with James Harden as you see it?
He doesn't have the explosion that he once had.
We don't have enough time.
I mean, simply put, his ability, if we look at his years in Houston in particular, to create separation, to finish through contact, to score off the bounce is not the same. Like just flat out on a basketball level. And so this is a thing where you realize this guy has been in the league a decade plus. And so if he's not committed to focusing on his body in a new way, I don't know that he's going to get that part of his game back. And because it was so heavily predicated on that, he's not going to be the guy to dribble and snake all into the paint the way Chris Paul has. That wasn't really his game. In particular, if he stays in Philly, that spacing is not necessarily there at all either. So he just doesn't have the quick twitch, the bounce, all of the things that made him elite in terms of his ability to score against defenders.
Yeah, so he's going to have to change, it seems, in a big way.
You can't help the club if you stay in the club. King of Diamonds was really a place that he likes to go to, like there's certain road places he likes to be in. You need to be in the health club, and you talked about his body. That's one thing, but what we're seeing is the lack of pop, the lack of finish, 2-point percentage. He is shooting under 50%, which throughout his career, normally he's an over 50% shooter from two, but 3 to 10 feet, brutal, under 30%. He's not finishing as much. Is it the length? Yes. Is it the lack of lift when he does get there? I think it's that too. He doesn't have that same burst, and a lot of that, it feels like, is it age or conditioning? It's probably a little bit of both, right? That's what it has to be. Well, how about this? When they don't have Joel Embiid and James Harden's on the court for the Sixers, their offensive rating is 109.8. For perspective, Monica, our New York Knicks were 23rd in the league in offensive rating at 109.7. So it just shows you That's not a good number.
Can we put up that playoff stat again? Because I think that's really important. I think one of the discussions around James Harden is you need him to be that guy in Houston. Look at the recent playoff numbers. Not that great.
Shot attempts tell you everything.
And the shot attempts tell you a lot, but not horrible. So I ask you this question, Monica. What does James Harden need to be? If he's not that 30-point guy in Houston with all that bounce and that fast twitch, what does he need to be to lead these Sixers to having a real chance against the Heat?
All right, now the following is predicated on Tyrese Maxey and Tobias Harris having out-of-body, I shouldn't say out-of-body, because both of them are capable. Right, yeah, Max is playing great, and Tobias Harris is capable of filling it up. I still think it wasn't too long ago where we weren't concerned yet about James Harden because of his ability to be a facilitator and the attention that he garners. Now, granted, Joel Embiid's not on the floor, completely changes the dynamic. However, to me, James Harden is now in the category of a three guy to me in terms of a big three that you have to respect because he can still knock down a catch and shoot, you know what I'm saying, get those percentages back up, but he still has the ability to facilitate. And as long as defenses are still respecting him, he will be able to find his teammates. Now, if something magical were to happen without Joel Embiid, that means he rattles up 12 plus assists and Maxey's gone for 40 and Harris is going for 35. I don't know that that's happening.
For them to win without Embiid, he's got to give you 30 a game as well. You just described what he was in Brooklyn last year when he became sort of a better version of what he was in Houston, which is a facilitator who could still score. And he had Kyrie and he had KD, and he was he was magnificent last year with Brooklyn in stretches. He wasn't that certainly this year, but he's also still falling into what he was in Houston, which is full ISO. He's leading the NBA in ISOs per game in the playoffs, almost 9, and that's Luka Doncic just slightly behind him. Here's the difference: he's shooting 32% on those ISOs. Luka's shooting 47% and getting to the foul line on them as well. So he's not efficient in the ISOs, and he's really gone full ISOs now, which is not what they need him to be.
I got to say, all of this is killing the Philly fan in me.